Hello everyone. This is not a story for the faint of heart. Today, we will be stepping into the darkness of the most gruesome cases, where evil not only exists, but also leaves bloody and haunting traces. This is Real Gruesome Murder Cases, a series of true stories about murders that made the whole world shudder. If you are ready to face the cold truth and the gruesome corners of humanity, come with me to delve deeper into each case. The dark night. A shadow of a figure was running in the dark. All around were tall trees, and only a small fraction of the moon's rays got through the canopy. The ground was a black void, with no difference between the dirt and the tree roots. A pack of wolves howled in the distance. With every gust of wind, the tree branches and leaves banged and rustled like a toddler playing with pots and pans. Under all of that was a low mumble, rhythmic, like a drum cadence, but ghostly in origin. The figure trips. Eli. The scene quakes. Eli. The moon disappeared. Elijah. Blinding fluorescent light replaced the woods. 13-year-olds Eli and Tyler were sitting in the mall food court, eating dinner across from each other. Eli's heart was pounding in his ears, and his hands trembled. Tyler put her hands on his. Eli, what did you see? Eli repeatedly blinked back at her as the fog lifted from his head. I don't really know. Come on, she said, slinging on a side bag as she raised from her chair. You can think about it on our way home. I don't want to miss the bus. Without a word, Eli cleaned up their table and carried the tray away. As soon as his hand was free, he reached for her hand. They walked away from the tables, with Tyler locking her arm from Eli's swinging. Not too many people were left in the mall. There were a few stragglers around the pop-up stands, but most were lacing their arms through jacket sleeves by the exits. However, two men, a twig-like one with close to the head African curls, and a log-like one with slicked hair, mostly to one side, didn't fit in either group. They stood off the side, away from everyone else, surveilling, looking for something. Their cookies and cream vibe didn't make Tyler divert their path. She was right until they stepped into their way. Excuse us, Tyler Woodlock and Elijah Krieger, the twig one asked through a British accent. Tyler pulled Eli closer. No, sorry, she answered, starting to walk around them, with her and Eli's fingers turning red. Government agents? The other man stopped them, flipping open his budget case. Miss Woodlock. The Brit slid closer, as Tyler gave out a nervous laugh. She pulled it together with a devious smirk. All right, agents. She stepped closer. But one thing first. Yes, the man said, putting his budget back. Tyler gave the Brit, the fitter one, a stiff kick in the shin. With him on the floor and his partner stunned, she yelled, "Run, Eli," giving Eli a push start. Eli sprinted off, getting a head start as Tyler toppled over a supply case. He headed for the loading docks, a path Tyler forced him to memorize for an emergency like this. As ordered, he ran without looking back. He nearly ran off the truck port in his mindset. He jumped down. Falling on his hands, he looked like a frog. He couldn't find the strength to stand, but he walked, half crawled, to the rear of the building. Collapsing against the brick, he took his chance to look back. She wasn't there. He stayed twisted around the corner, waiting for Tyler. All of a sudden, bright light beamed onto him. Drawing Eli's attention, the voice called out, "Stay there!" They boomed like a drill sergeant. He clambered to his feet and did the total opposite as the voice commanded. A stampede of boots followed Eli as he jotted into the wooded area on the other side of the loading lane. The fall night grew darker as he was chased farther in the woods. With every gust of wind, the tree branches and leaves banged and rustled. Their movement shifted and blocked the moon as if in a game of peekaboo. This and the uneven ground made Eli bobble like a pinball. The voice rang out again. "Get him! Don't let him get away." It allured him to look back. A light show of flashlights was going on behind. Even with all the light, however, the people remained shadows. A gopher tunnel tripped Eli up a bit. As he looked up, a pair of amber eyes, low to the ground, stared at him from a few yards away. The progression of howls following the encounter made Eli run fast. He couldn't hear the boots anymore. He would turn his head a few degrees before forcing it straight. The last one sent him flying into the ground. Tyler peered over a row of bushes. Eli laid on the ground, with only his chest moving up and down. As soon as she raised from her position, two men came into view. One went to Eli's side, and the other pulled out a radio. Asset found, about 4 clicks due east of the loading dock. The radio guy looked around the perimeter as the second man searched Eli's pocket. Tyler fished around in her bag. In the dark, the inside of her bag was a void. She felt cold metal as more men appeared. The one left Eli's side. "The cards aren't here, sir." Eli let at a moan as he began to stir. "Bring him. We'll find out soon enough where they are." He turned and started the procession away. Radio and Pocket Man gave each other a glance before Pockets threw Eli over his shoulder. The remaining men followed. Tyler took her hand out of her back. She fell to her knees, with her hands on her face. As the first tears started falling, she wiped them away with her fists clenched. She ran back to the mall, heading towards the parking lot. Her head bubbled back and forth, looking at the cars and people. Losing her structure, she fell back on her knees. She started crying again, right before her ears perked up. Snapping her head around, she saw the 2 agents from inside. "We lost, ma'am," she heard the agent who threw his badge in her face. They were ready to run. A grin grew across her face. She spined back with her attention being grabbed by the rear of the car she fell in front of. The license read CA exempt 387690. She had seen enough of those when the police raided their Romani dwellings. The odds of that being their car, she didn't know. Not did she know the odds of them automatically unlocking it far enough away that she could climb into the trunk before they were close enough to see. The two agents and their unknown guest arrived at their motel on the outskirts of town almost an hour after Eli was taken. The building wasn't too big, just 2 rows with 8 or so doors each. Behind each were a single room and a bath. The agents went first. Tyler waited until she couldn't hear them anymore before pushing out the back row cushion. Sitting on the floor of the car, she watched as they entered a room with the number 6 on the door. She opened the door carefully so she wouldn't hit the next car. In the same manner, she closed it without a sound. She strategically stepped as she reached back into her bag. After peering into the room's window, she saw the 2 agents with their backs to the door. There seemed to be nothing but a wall in front of them. But that didn't bother Tyler. She walked right in and pulled her hand out of her bag before slamming the door shut. The agents jumped if shots had been fired. They found that they weren't too far off. Dropping their phone, they were face to face with a gun barrel. "Hello again, miss." "Woodlock," one agent said through his British accent as they snuck for their weapons. "Don't patronize me," she said, cocking her gun. "Do you think you can pull yours before I shoot the both of you? I've already proved I have grace under pressure." They both bring their hands forward. "What do you want?" the other one asked. "Well, Agent Vincent Petrov, I'm thinking about a trade." Flaunting his arrogant British accent, he asked, "What would you have that we would?" Cutting him off, Tyler pulled out a deck of tarot cards. "Really? I might be a child, but I'm not an idiot." "That still doesn't answer my question," Vincent said. "I want Eli back." "Excuse me, even if I believe for a second you're not with the men who took him, you bring him back to me, and you get these no-so-meaningless cards, and we all live happily ever after." The agents gave each a glance. "Let me make this easier. You do this, or I shoot you and go on my merry way." Eli was groggy, teetering between awake and asleep for the car ride, though no one could tell through the blindfold, nor from his position in the trunk. They had tried his wrists and ankles to stop the little fight he had in him. No kicking, no hitting, no running. More helpless than he was without Tyler. He was asleep when the car stopped, but was jarred awake when one of the men yanked him out. Being bobbled around, his face was red and breathed deeply, trying to keep dinner in. The only relief came when he was dropped to the floor. After the bang of the door, Eli was left to wait once more in the dark. He pulled at his ropes, only stopping when the burning turned into paper-cut sensations. No closer to freedom, he crumbled. Stopped straining, stopped fighting, stopped holding it together. Back at the motel, Tyler sat crisscrossed on the first bed from the door, yanking her locket back and forth on its chain. She stared at the agents that sat on the other side of the room. She tried to hear what they were saying, but they put the same effort into the opposite. "What are we going to do, Miles?" Vincent asked. "Play the game. Easier said than done. We know when, where, and a fair idea of by who. The who is what scares me. I would be more scared of the lass if we don't." "I agree with Agent Walker." A woman, dressed in a white skirt suit with her dark hair in a spiral braid, said just inside the room. "Ms. Isles?" Vincent jumped out of his seat. Tyler did the same. She stared at the woman, jotting a glance at the door, then back. No one heard the door open or closed. "Hello, miss." "Woodlock," Ms. Isles said, raising her hand. "Hi," Tyler said, more like a question than snipe, without shaking her hand. "Well, do you want the good news or the bad news?" "Good would be best," Vincent toddled. Isles looked at Tyler. "Find the boy. Bring him back. Finish your original mission," she said through a smile. She began to walk away. She already had her hand on the doorknob before any of them stopped her. "What about the bad news?" Miles shouted. "Work with her, Walker. Work with her," she said, leaving before and without argument. Eli had no idea how long he was asleep for, but when he opened his eyes, he was met with a blinding light. He stretched out to find his legs and arms unbound. Panicked and joyed, he shuddered and jostled. He missed the hand on the wrist. A shadow eclipsed the bright light. "Do you mind not moving?" The voice sounded familiar. With the light masked, Eli could start to see the room. First, the man kneeling in front of him, graying hair, flannel button-up shirt, and placid blue eyes. Then small red spots on the gray cement floor. And last, white bandage roll, some on his right wrist, and the man wrapping more onto his left. "I think you've bled enough on my floor for today," the man said, finishing his work. "Your floor? Don't be put off by the casual dress. I'm the boss here, and that's why I can offer you this. You answer all my questions, and you can go home to your gypsy family, to your sweet wife, Tyler, without any more harm." "What do you want to know?" Eli asked as he sat up. "Why don't we start with something simple? Why did you run away from me at the loading docks?" said the man who blared a flashlight in Eli's eyes earlier that night. Vincent sat at the small two-person table, glaring at a street map and a calculator. "How is it going, Vince?" Miles asked, leaning over Vincent's shoulder. "Not great. Knowing that they took Elijah 75 minutes ago, and assuming they stayed within 5 miles per hour of the speed limit, they can be anywhere within and around 50 miles away from the mall. That's a big area. You don't know the half of it." "Miss Woodlock." "Tyler!" she yelled at him. "My name's Tyler." "Tyler." He put his hands up halfway. "Can you give us anything? Car model? Direction? Anything?" "I was a little busy," trying not to get caught myself, trying to find you fools. If we try to search all of this, Vincent pulled Miles closer and lowered his voice. We won't get to him in time. Don't talk like that, Tyler yelled, with a little cry behind it. You start talking like that, and things will end that way. She fell back onto the bed, with her hands on her face. Miles glared down at Vincent, with his arms crossed. He kept that position as he walked over to the bed. Sitting next to her, he put his arm around her, with an air bubble between them. Thanks, she said, whipping her hands out from her face. It's getting late. Why don't you rest for a bit? We don't want our sharpshooter's eyes heavy. I've been one for the last 10 years. But, she paused, bringing up her watch on her right wrist. Watch, she continued, jumped off the bed. What? Miles followed her towards Vincent. Watch. She started searching her bag. I got Eli a watch for our first anniversary. He never takes it off. She presented the watch's instructions. And it has GPS. Anniversary? They asked. During their time together, the man asked Eli an array of questions. Most about trivial personal things to get Eli relaxed and uncoil from his balled-up position. It was working, too. He was as relaxed as if he was home. His eyes glassed over as the questions droned on. The room faded away. A dark place appeared. A spotlight shines on the center. A glint of metal moved in from the bottom. A gun, revolver, a white hand, a flannel sleeve. The hand snapped the bullet holder back into the gun. It aimed. Destroying the image, the shot fired caused Eli to scream and hold his ear. His ears were still ringing when the man tried to calm him down. Eli saw what he expected was on his own face, on the man's. The man removed Eli's hands. His mouth moved, but Eli couldn't hear it. He yanked himself away. Why are you asking me all these questions? What do you want? The man had a blank face. He opened his mouth, but nothing came out. After straightening his shirt, he said, You have something that belongs to me. I don't have anything. Eli shuddered. Not now, but... He exhaled heavily through his nose. Tyler gave you something. A set of tarot cards. I don't know where they are, he stuttered. Well, it's the last question you have to answer, so give it a good thought. They could be anywhere. In the woods where you chased. Back in the mall where the other two did. With, he said, trying to put the brakes in his mouth. Sir, you know where they are. No, I don't. Yes, you do. He pulled a gun from his back waistband. Tell me. Eli's mouth opened, but the only crashing noises came. The sound made both of them jot their attention towards the door. The man gritted his teeth. The other two. Staring down at his gun, he weighed it in his hand before bringing it down on Eli's head. Eli fell to the floor again. The last thing he saw before the backs of his eyelids was the man's black shoes walking out the door. The black gave way to wisps, at first merging into cacti and sand. They whirled by through the view from a car window. Tyler sat on the opposite side, smiling back. In the front seat sat Miles and Vincent. The whole picture felt loving and had a dream-like glow. It faded into a face full of fabric. Before he could freak out like his earlier ones, a hand touched his shoulder. "You're all right now. You're safe," Tyler cooed. In a quick movement, Eli raised to hug her, nearly bringing them to the floor. Regaining her structure, she hugged back. In their embrace, Eli missed Miles and Vincent standing off to the side, smiling down at them. "Want the good news or the bad news?" "Good would be best," Vincent toddled. Miles looked at Tyler. "Find the boy. Bring him back. Finish your original mission," she said through a smile. She began to walk away. She already had her hand on the doorknob before any of them stopped her. "What about the bad news?" Miles shouted. "Work with her, Walker. Work with her," she said, leaving before and without argument. Eli had no idea how long he was asleep for, but when he opened his eyes, he was met with a blinding light. He stretched out to find his legs and arms unbound. Panicked and joyed, he shuddered and jostled. He missed the hand on the wrist. A shadow eclipsed the bright light. "Do you mind not moving?" The voice sounded familiar. With the light masked, Eli could start to see the room. First, the man kneeling in front of him. Graying hair, flannel button-up shirt, and placid blue eyes. Then small red spots on the gray cement floor. And last, white bandage roll, some on his right wrist, and the man wrapping more onto his left. "I think you've bled enough on my floor for today," the man said, finishing his work. "Your floor? Don't be put off by the casual dress. I'm the boss here, and that's why I can offer you this. You answer all my questions, and you can go home to your gypsy family, to your sweet wife, Tyler, without any more harm." "What do you want to know?" Eli asked as he sat up. "Why don't we start with something simple? Why did you run away from me at the loading docks?" said the man who blared a flashlight in Eli's eyes earlier that night. Vincent sat at the small two-person table, glaring at a street map and a calculator. "How is it going, Vince?" Miles asked, leaning over Vincent's shoulder. "Not great. Knowing that they took Elijah 75 minutes ago, and assuming they stayed within 5 miles per hour of the speed limit, they can be anywhere within and around 50 miles away from the mall. That's a big area. You don't know the half of it." "Miss Woodlock." "Tyler!" she yelled at him. "My name's Tyler." "Tyler." He put his hands up halfway. "Can you give us anything? Car model, direction, anything?" "I was a little busy, trying not to get caught myself. Trying to find you fools. If we try to search all of this..." Vincent pulled Miles closer and lowered his voice. We won't get to him in time. Don't talk like that, Tyler yelled, with a little cry behind it. You start talking like that, and things will end that way. She fell back onto the bed, with her hands on her face. Miles glared down at Vincent, with his arms crossed. He kept that position as he walked over to the bed. Sitting next to her, he put his arm around her, with an air bubble between them. Thanks, she said, whipping her hands out from her face. It's getting late. Why don't you rest for a bit? We don't want our sharpshooter's eyes heavy. I've been one for the last 10 years. But, she paused, bringing up her watch on her right wrist. Watch, she continued, jumped off the bed. What? Miles followed her towards Vincent. Watch. She started searching her bag. I got Eli a watch for our first anniversary. He never takes it off. She presented the watch's instructions. And it has GPS. Anniversary? They asked. During their time together, the man asked Eli an array of questions. Most about trivial personal things to get Eli relaxed and uncoil from his balled-up position. It was working, too. He was as relaxed as if he was home. His eye, what lies beneath? Summer, 1972. Road trip! Pam screamed over the sound of the jukebox. She had shoved her chair aside, since there was no dance floor in this hole-in-wall bar. Her arms in the air, hips bumping and grinding to the beat, feet barely moving. After half a pitcher, she could sway her hips or move her feet. She opted for swaying to Otis Redding. Wastin' time. Barb was still capable of doing a fair lip sync of sitting on the dock of the bay. Pam a tad too wasted to remember all the words, fancying themselves the last hippies, the two girls planning to leave their homes in Georgia and head for the Frisco Bay. A few weeks earlier, Barb had bought a '58 VW van, orange, of course. Whoever had owned Old Orange before had taken out the rear benches and built a sleeping platform, leaving plenty of storage underneath. About 10 days into the trip, by the time they came to Houston, they realized that the air hose, a vital necessity to cool the engine, would not stay where it was supposed to be. So, taking the southern route through the desert was out of the question. So, they turned right toward Dallas. Old Orange had a few other minor quirks. For instance, the radio only worked in third and fourth gear. The windshield wipers only went one way. After each swipe, whoever was in the passenger seat needed to pound on the windshield to dislodge the wiper. Orange's top speed was 50 mph if the wind was at their back, a little faster if going downhill. The starter had left them in New Orleans, which showed remarkable good taste for a starter, and made Pam the designated pusher. In Dallas, they learned the expensive lesson that transmissions require fluids. They spent a week in a tiny village at Lake Superior Shore. where the main entertainment was going to the dump and watching the bears feed. Pointing west again, the plan was to bypass Denver and go to Aspen. Orange was willing but unable to keep the minimum speed of 40 km/h while climbing up I-70. Once again, a detour was needed. They headed north into Wyoming before turning west again. 2 days later, they left Jackson Hole after breakfast and entered the Grand Tetons with its raw, relatively young peaks. Mid-morning, they pulled in at a rest stop next to a small lake. It was mid-June. The North Slope had been warmed by the sun for several weeks and was carpeted with wildflowers. Every color in the rainbow, and all the ones in between. The south side was still holding on to patches of snow. This contrast, on either side of the still water, reflecting the blue sky, was breathtaking. While Barb was coaxing enough life from the Coleman stove to heat water, Pam stretched her legs. Avoiding the clumps of snow and sludge, she made her way up the south hill. Feeling a rumble in the ground, she was stunned at the sight. When she looked over the top of the hill, animals. Moose, elk, deer, rabbits, skunks, buffalo, the odd wolf, all running eastward. Pam was a city girl, but even she thought this was strange. None of the animals paid any attention to her or each other. They ran, stampeded across the meadow as fast as their legs would move. Worried, she returned to the van. Barb listened and shrugged. "It's nothing," she said. "If there was a fire, they would have closed the park. Let's have our coffee and go on." Pam wasn't so sure, but took her word for it. Soon they drove on, admiring the breathtaking majesty that are the Tetons. By early afternoon, they entered the Visitors Center of Yellowstone Park. Right on time, which meant too late to get front row seats. Or rather, front row standing spots to watch the show. While the summer intern was giving a play-by-play, Old Faithful did its thing. "Well, folks, thank you for coming. If you want to see it again, please come back in." Old Faithful spewed again. "Wow," the kid gushed. "That's a first." And again, another plume of sulfuric steam erupted. The intern stood staring, mouth open. Everybody felt the rumble. Some may have been more alarmed than others, but they all felt it. Old Faithful was quiet for a few minutes. People dared to exhale in relief. Pam just wanted to grab Barb and run, but she didn't. She stayed with the other tourists and stared, and then another spurt. No, that's not the right word. A geyser, a flume. Oh, hell. Let's just call it what it was. An eruption. The hot, sulfuric steam bubbled up and erupted, overstepping its recognized boundaries, and sprayed over the poor, hapless tourists who were standing on the eastern boardwalk. This time, Pam dragged her friend away. Barb jumped in the driver's seat, while Pam, since that was her job, pushed the old relic off. As soon as Barb was able to turn the engine over, Pam ran and jumped in the passenger seat. People were screaming, running, elbowing, pushing and stumbling over each other. Some looked like extras in a horror movie, faces burned, clothing melting to their skin. Only this was real. She didn't want to watch, didn't want to see. But it's like a massive pile-up. You just have to. Pam gasped when she saw the head. Just think of the slobbering, angry head. The poster child of the Jurassic Park movies. The face only a mother could love. That's what reared up out of the boiling water. It had had eons to incubate and mature. And that day, it was ready to claim its heritage. If they'd taken the time, they might have wondered how many of those creatures had laid their eggs in the warm springs of Yellowstone. How many eggs had survived the long winter that followed the meteor impact? The one that extinguished this one's mommy and daddy. They didn't have to ask or wonder, because just as Barb was able to back up without running over anyone, another one crawled out. This one had wings, and within minutes took flight, fully grown. Or at least, hopefully, it was full grown. If this was just a baby, it could gown up to be much bigger than a jumbo jet. Much, much bigger. The lake, that famous tourist attraction, that placid aqua blue, edged in yellow circle, was now a churning cauldron with prehistoric critters peeking out before clambering ashore, screeching, howling, and knocking over, crushing anything in their paths. "Go, please go," Pam begged. "I can't," Barb cried. "I want to, but I can't make myself drive over anyone. If you don't, they will." Pam pointed to the creatures that were crawling out of the water. "Oh, shit! Oh, shit! Oh, shit!" Barb summed up the situation, though they knew it was time to haul ass. And even then, it might be too late. They sat there in the deceptive safety of Vold Orange and stared as one grotesque beast after another crawled out of the boiling water. "Go," Pam whimpered. "Go, please, go, Barb." She nudged, shook, punched, did what she could to make Barb wake up. "Go," she screamed, with a curse and a shudder. Barb put her foot on the gas and jumped forward. "Don't stall, don't stall, don't stall." Pam prayed as she turned backward in her seat and watched the first tree burst spontaneously into flames. "Faster, Barb, faster." Barb was a good driver. That day, she turned into an excellent demolition derby driver. Aggressively, she drove around everybody, forced people into ditches and off the side of the mountain. She prayed, the act of contrition. "O my Lord God, I am heartily sorry for offending thee." all the way into Idaho. They had grumbled the day before, when the gas station in Jackson Hole had gouged them, when the pump claimed to have put 12 gallons into a half-full 10-gallon tank, then charged them the usury price of 42 cents per gallon for the privilege. But at least they had a full tank, and they were going downhill, which in the little old van was a plus, a great plus. Maybe those flying creatures were colorblind and couldn't see orange because cars left and right, front and back of them were picked up and dribbled like basketballs, rolled like marbles, stepped on like empty beer cans. But Barb weaved and bobbed and evaded their games. It didn't take long, just a few millennia, to make it to Shoshone ice caves, where they huddled with hundreds of other refugees till the National Guard came to tell them that it was safe to leave the cave. Pam and Barb never made it to San Francisco. Old Orange threw a rod the next day. Witches get stitches. The tea house was full of women sipping from cups and pouring from various teapots. Mona, Heptonstall, winced. She didn't have any money to buy a drink. She didn't have any money at all. She was only a young schoolgirl. But the sight of all these women put her at ease a little. And God knew that she needed somewhere to feel safe right now. Mona ducked into the shop, past the few tables outside, occupied by little old ladies sitting in the shade. The aroma inside the tea house was exotic and familiar, exciting and cozy. Steam wafted from the rims of mugs, none of which were matching. It was as though the owner had put serious effort into ensuring all crockery sets were different. Women sat clustered into groups and pairs, chatting away. Some sat solo, unconcerned with their lack of company. They smiled, contented and closed-eyed, into the sunshine while sipping their brews. On the walls, various posters and flags hung. There was something about flowers and plants here. There was something about animals being friends there. The symbol for females, the circle above a cross, was here. Rainbow flags and a flag with light blue, pink, and white stripes hung there. Plant pots housed a forest's worth of greenery, growing in every direction. The flowers crawled up stakes and dangled from shelves, and dog-eared books about cooking, herbology, feminism, and equal rights were everywhere. Mona's thudding heart slowed, and her stitched-up eyebrow settled into a steady pulse. This tea house was a nice place, a good place, one that she imagined that Grubby Gilbert wouldn't think to check. She glanced over her shoulder out the window into the sun-drowned street outside. Grubby Gilbert Boyd came plodding along as if on cue, a frown etched upon his bovine countenance. His pot belly bounced as he slowed to a trot, his head jerking around like a pigeon's. A bead of sweat trickled down his forehead. Beneath his food-stained shirt, his chest rose and fell with heavy breaths. His eyes passed over the tea house, and he didn't seem to register it was there. Then he moved on. A few seconds later, Gilbert had passed the shop and disappeared down the street. She couldn't help but grin at the boy's stupidity. If only it were always that easy to escape his chubby fingers. Everyone, her teachers and parents, said he only picked on her because he liked her. He pushed her and pulled her and tripped her up because he fancied her. To Mona, this had made no sense whatsoever. First, why would you do those things to somebody you liked? Second of all, what kind of excuse was that? She had to endure this unhappiness because of the reason behind his actions. Besides, even if he had asked her out, she didn't think he was all that interesting or good-looking. She wasn't interested. When she'd split open her eyebrow after he'd stuck his leg out last week, she hoped that'd be the end. Alas, grubby Gilbert didn't give up. She stepped to the side to watch him trot down the street. She walked right into a table whilst she gazed in the opposite direction. Mona squeaked, timid like a mouse, as time slowed around her. The table toppled over. The mugs crashed to the floor and disintegrated, spilling hot tea over the rug. The flowery doily drifted to the ground, where the liquid stained it brown. The two women flinched backwards from the carnage and squealed. They escaped the flying china unscathed, but lost their beverages to gravity. Mona gasped, wide-eyed, hands raised in self-defense. Oh no. Oh no. 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 This accident was not good. Not good at all. She had no money, nothing with which she could make amends. She tried to think, speak, and act. But fear rooted her to the spot. A woman with a tea towel draped over her shoulder came marching up to the scene. The woman was tall and had an out-there fashion sense. Her long hair, which she'd tied up into a bun, she'd dyed electric blue. Her eyebrows and her eyes were coffee brown. Tattoos crawled up both arms, under the sleeves of her dress, and up the sides of her neck. The dress was black with a flowery design, both gothic and summery. A hoop dangled from her nose, and more piercings than Mona had ever seen dotted her ears. She took the tea towel and dropped it into the puddle, which disappeared. Before Mona could blink, the table was upright, its doily pristine, and the mug shards were gone. The blue-haired woman called to a younger girl who was busy behind the counter. "Sabrina, another ginger tea and a peppermint tea for this table, please." On the house, of course. Mona shriveled before the sight of her. Adults always seemed big. despite being no taller than the other grown-ups. This woman seemed like a giantess. Some unknown qualities made her presence more clear. She squeezed her hands together, averted her eyes, and awaited the tongue lashing. "I'm Alice Wallaker, and this is my tea house. Do you mind answering a few questions? Oh God, oh God, oh God. I'm sorry, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to. I'm such an idiot. I'm such a stupid idiot. Alice silenced her with a wave of her hand. She smiled. Never mind about that, Mona. Don't cry over spilt milk. Unless if it's for a black cat. What's your name, sweetie? Something cold and jagged inside Mona began to melt. Calmness washed over her. She looked up into those warm brown eyes and didn't see the hostility she expected to find. I'm Mona Heptonstall. Alice's eyes rolled over her every feature, settling on the stitches in her eyebrow. An odd look sparkled behind her kind eyes. And what's his name, Mona? Mona took a sharp inhale of breath. How did she know? Mona debated lying and telling Alice that there was no him. She was fine, and nothing was wrong. She soon abandoned this, then entertained the thought of giving the woman a fake name. But then that flittered away like a bat on the night's breeze. In the end, Mona told the truth. Gilbert Boyd. Alice wrinkled her nose as though she knew the boy already. She inhaled through her nose, then out through her mouth. She bent down, picked up her tea towel, now bone dry, and slung it over her shoulder again. Come with me. Uh-oh. Here it came. This point was the moment that Ms. Wallaker would call the police, and they'd take her away. The cops would call her school, and the school would tell her parents. She'd be in so much trouble because she wanted to escape Grubby Gilbert. Alice ushered her through the packed tea house with a gentle hand on one shoulder. It seemed that every pair of eyes watched them go with hungry curiosity. And something else was in those gazes, too. Alice took her into the back of the tea house, past the telephone. Mona opened her mouth to ask, but then closed it again. Alice opened a door near the back of the building and led her down a beautiful wooden staircase. Despite their descent, the sunlight seemed to grow stronger. It shined through windows that should have been underground. She pushed open a grand pair of double doors and brought her into. Mona frowned. A library? Alice turned to face her. She stretched her hands out either side of her, as if reaching for the walls. Behind her, shelves of books stretched on for an impossible distance. Here and there bustled all kinds of women. They scanned shelves and pored over forgotten tomes. Some looked happy and healthy. Others looked battered and bruised. Expressions ranged from interest to anger. A middle-aged woman with a black eye gritted her teeth and flicked through the pages of a thick book. Nearby, a granny chuckled into her stack of open books, mumbling about teaching the bugger. "Yes," said Alice, "a library, a special library, a secret library containing hidden knowledge for people like us, like us?" Alice smiled. Women. Now, Mona understood what had been in the eyes of all those women as Alice took her through the tea house. Sympathy, sympathy, and understanding. They'd all been in similar positions before, too. They knew how it felt. And when they saw a little girl experiencing the same, they couldn't help but send their hearts to her. Her mouth dried up. "Only for women," Alice nodded, then turned and beckoned her. "Come, we can find something to help your predicament. We have a little something for everyone, from ailments to revenge. But something gentler might be a good starting point for you." Mona paused. "You're going to help me? But I wrecked your tea house. Alice surprised her by laughing. "Oh, Mona, you didn't wreck anything. Besides, you were seeking shelter, weren't you? Well, you found it." Mona found herself laughing too. A few minutes prior, she'd never felt less like laughing. But being around this woman had eased her wounded heart. It was as though she were magic. She stopped dead in her tracks. Are you? Alice turned, eyebrows raised, mischief written in the color of her cheeks. She said nothing and waited for Mona to ask. She blurted it out. "Are you a witch?" Alice's eyes danced. "Why, of course. All the best women are." She'd expected to feel terror, coldness, claustrophobia. This woman was into the dark arts. Alice practiced magic and witchcraft. She ought to be frightening. And yet, she wasn't. At least, not to Mona. But she thought Alice could be scary to the right or wrong kind of person. The sort of person like Gilbert Boyd. And the types of people Gilbert Boyd would grow up into if left unchecked. But to Mona, she felt as if an umbrella of love had opened over her head. Not only was the rain no longer falling on her, but the sun shone through the material. Mona followed the witch deeper into the library. "What kind of help, Ms. Wallaker?" Alice hummed and scanned the shelves, pointing at them as if eyeing a police lineup. At last, she said, "Aha!" and produced a book from a shelf. It wasn't quite Baby's First Seance or Witchcraft for Dummies, but close enough. A beginner's book, an entry point into the dark arts. Only, were these arts dark? Or had men labeled them as such? Mona took the book, feeling the weight of power crackling through her fingertips. She couldn't help but utter a contented sigh. Alice opened the book and slid a finger down the index page, tapping on certain words. Like this, Mona. There's some powerful stuff in here. Stuff that I wouldn't share with a boy, no matter how old he was. But you can handle that responsibility, can't you, Mona? Mona decided that she could. Dance of the Damned. The dimly lit bar exuded an aura of faded elegance, the soft glow of neon lights casting a surreal ambiance over the audience, who sat in hushed anticipation. As the spotlight flickered to life, illuminating the makeshift stage at one end of the room, the murmurs of conversation died down, replaced by an air of eager expectation. As the curtains slowly parted, revealing the expanse of the stage, a solitary figure stood poised at its center, the ballerina, with a grace that seemed to transcend the earthly realm. The ballerina came to life as the first notes of the music filled the air. Her movements were a symphony of fluidity and precision, each step a testament to years of tireless dedication and unwavering discipline. Like a delicate flower swaying in the breeze, she floated across the stage, her every motion a masterpiece. Her arms moved languidly, weaving a tale of love and longing with each sweep and arc. She beckoned the audience into her world with each movement, inviting them to share her emotions. Poised and elegant, the ballerina commanded the stage with a commanding and serene presence. Her posture was flawless, her form a study in perfect alignment. She seemed to defy gravity, soaring effortlessly through the air with divine grace. Her footwork was a marvel to behold, each step executed with exquisite precision and grace. From the delicate steps to the lightning-fast turns, her movements were a testament to the strength and agility of the human body. The audience watched in awe as she leaped and twirled across the stage, her every movement a testament to the power of the human spirit. But beyond the technical prowess, the ballerina's ability to convey emotion captivated the audience. With each extension of her leg and each arch of her back, she imbued her performance with a depth of feeling that resonated with all who watched. From the depths of despair to the heights of ecstasy, her dance spoke to the universal human experience, transcending language and culture. The ballerina executed a series of mesmerizing turns that left the audience breathless. Spinning gracefully across the stage, she seemed to defy the laws of physics, her movements a blur of motion and light. But as the music swelled to its crescendo and the time for her final bow arrived, a sudden sense of unease settled over the bar. With a flourish, the ballerina prepared to take her bow, her movements graceful and poised. But then disaster struck in a moment that seemed to stretch into eternity. Inexplicably, she stumbled, her perfect balance faltering as she fell to the ground in a heap. Gasps of shock echoed through the bar as the audience watched in horror. But it was what happened next that genuinely chilled them to the bone. As the ballerina lay on the stage, everything around her seemed to shift and blur, as if reality was unraveling. The once vibrant colors of the stage faded to a dull, lifeless gray, and a sickening sense of dread hung heavy in the air. And then, from her wrists and ankles, blood began to flow, staining the stage crimson red. It pooled around her, a macabre tableau of horror and despair. With a sudden jerk, the ballerina rose to her feet, her movements jerky and unnatural. It was as if she were a marionette manipulated by unseen hands, her body moving in grotesque contortions that defied all logic and reason. The audience watched in stunned silence as the once graceful ballerina twisted and convulsed, her limbs bending at impossible angles. And then, with a horrifying realization, they understood what was happening. She was no longer in control of her own body. With each agonizing movement, it became clear that she was under control by some evil force, a dark presence that lurked unseen in the shadows. As she danced her final, nightmarish dance, the audience could only watch her twisted performance in helpless horror. They knew they were witnessing something more sinister than a dance. They saw the manifestation of pure, unadulterated evil, a force beyond comprehension that had seized control of the ballerina's soul. As the ballerina rose from the stage floor, her once graceful movements became grotesque spasms of pain and fear. With each jerky motion, her bones fractured and splintered, and the sickening sound of snapping echoed through the bar like a macabre symphony. Her limbs twisted at unnatural angles, each movement a torment of agony that etched lines of suffering onto her pale, sweat-drenched face. Her eyes, wide with terror, pleaded for release. Still, her mouth was closed by wire that had inexplicably wrapped around her lips, sealing them shut with cruel finality. Blood dripped from the small holes punctured by the wire, staining her pristine costume with crimson droplets. With each convulsion, her skin ripped, revealing raw, red flesh beneath. The air was thick with the metallic scent of blood and the sickening stench of decay, a suffocating fog that enveloped the stage in a shroud of horror. The audience watched in horrified fascination as the ballerina's body contorted and twisted, her movements growing more frantic and erratic with each passing moment. It was as if she looked torn apart from the inside out, her very essence consumed by the dark forces that held her in their grasp. The once pristine costume began to tear and shred, with each jerky movement. Fabric rents apart like paper, exposing swaths of pale, sweat-sickened skin beneath. The delicate tutu, once a symbol of elegance and grace, now hung in tatters around her hips, the shredded remnants barely clinging to her broken form. With each agonizing twist and contortion, more of her flesh lay bare to the horrified audience. The delicate lace and satin that had once adorned her body now lay in tatters on the stage floor, a grotesque parody of the beauty that had once been. And as the last shreds of fabric fell away, the ballerina stood naked and exposed before the stunned onlookers. Her body, once a vision of perfection, was now marred by bruises and welts, the result of the unspeakable torture she had endured. The audience, pinned to their chairs by a mixture of terror and morbid fascination, could only watch in horror as the ballerina's broken form was laid bare before them. There was nowhere to look and hide from the gruesome spectacle unfolding on stage. Everyone was dressed like ballerinas and knew they would dance on that stage. They wanted to run, but couldn't move, as an invisible force controlled them. As the ballerina's tortured dance finally came to an end, the audience was left to grapple with the horrifying images that had seared into their minds, a grim testament to the depths of depravity that lurked within the shadows of the human soul. And then, with a final, gut-wrenching spasm, she collapsed to the ground in a heap of broken bones and shredded flesh. Her once beautiful form stood reduced to nothing more than a grotesque pile of meat and bone, a haunting reminder of the horrors that lurked beneath the surface of reality. A palpable tension hung in the air, suffocating the bar in an oppressive silence. The audience, gripped by horror and fascination, could not tear their eyes away from the grotesque spectacle unfolding before them. Everything disappeared into darkness, leaving only screams. The darkness seemed to last forever. Suddenly, as the final notes of the haunting melody faded into the darkness, the stage erupted into blinding light, illuminating a scene of unspeakable horror. Standing at the center of the stage was another woman, clad in a tattered ballerina costume. Yet, any semblance of grace or beauty was shattered by the sight of the twisted iron-spiked wire that bound her limbs, cutting into her flesh with every movement. Where her eyes should have been, there were only bloody craters oozing with the sickening evidence of unspeakable violence. Her mouth, too, was sealed shut with glue, denying her even the semblance of a voice to cry out in pain. With a start, the woman began to dance, her movements jerky and erratic as she struggled against the cruel restraints that bound her. Blood spilled onto the stage with each tortured step, staining the pristine floorboards with a sickening crimson hue as the grotesque spectacle unfolded on stage. 10 figures sat in silence, their faces hidden behind intricate designs of porcelain and feathers, giving them an air of anonymity and intrigue. Dressed uniformly in black suits and dresses, the men and women held glasses filled with a dark crimson liquid, which remained a mystery to those around them. With each sickening snap of bone, they raised their glasses in a silent toast, the red liquid sloshing gently within. Their reactions were chillingly composed, their expressions hidden behind the masks as they watched the ballerina's torment unfold with a sense of detached amusement. To them, the grotesque display was not a source of horror, but a form of entertainment, a dreadful performance to be savored and enjoyed. And so, as the final horrific act played out on stage, and the ballerina's lifeless form lay crumpled on the ground, the figures rose from their seats in unison, their masks giving nothing away as they started to laugh. The thumping. The museum's intercom crackled on with train station static. "Hello, Norval Museum." I ducked at the sound, trying to escape it, cracking my eardrums. He spoke fast, like a sports announcer, at the most critical part of the game. "Welcome to your nightly broadcast from your favorite night guard. As always, we must get the boring things out of the way before we have some fun." His voice trailed up and down with the meter of a radio host. It was well practiced. "If there is any other human in this fine establishment other than your Steve and Linda, remember, you are stuffed. If there is anyone else here, you will be arrested, and you could be charged with robbery as you are on the premises 30 minutes after closing." He sounded way too excited for his long night shift. "So, if there are any other living souls in this building, we get to start my favorite game. Hide and go, speak. I'll count to 30, and then the game starts. Have fun." I could hear the big generators for each light system shutting off, their cranks getting closer each time until the painting in front of me darkened. As my eyes adjusted to the dim light of the exit sign, his words started to set in my head. "You will be arrested." I couldn't be arrested, not again, and especially not with robbery charges. Over the still air, a whistle was carried from deep within the museum. It tickled my ears with its swinging tune. With the lightest footsteps I could make, I reached the exit sign. Touching the cold metal made my hair stand on end as I gently pressed on the long bar until a loud click crashed through the room like a cymbal. The whistling stopped, and the silence became much louder. I looked around frantically, removing some of my precious light as my hair whipped around my face. If I was caught, I would have to look into my mother's eyes as she said, "I wouldn't be surprised if she did this, Judge." I couldn't hear that again. My eyes caught a big pot in the middle of the room. It was decorated with strips and little dancing people moving across the two-dimensional plane. As carefully as possible, I opened the lid and slipped my first leg into it. My footsteps sounded like a gong as I put my second in and slipped my body past the hole into the pot. Once the lid was over my head, I was in total darkness. Not even putting my hand in front of my face would give my eyes information. My breathing sounded like it was through a megaphone as it rose up and down, breathing in the clay. which was probably hundreds of years old. I tried to close my eyes, even though it changed nothing, and think about something other than where I was. The more I thought, the more my breathing sounded like it was coming from a tornado. My wind created gale force winds faster as I felt water drip onto my folded knees. My mind raced almost as fast. A thumping started to grow louder. At first, I thought it was from outside that he had found me. It kept getting faster, like he was running in place right outside my pot, teasing me with the promise of captivity, playing with me, just like his stupid voice played up and down like a carousel. I put a hand over my mouth to quiet my breath. Thump, 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 thump. Over and over, like an incessant heartbeat, his feet went up and down and up and down. For minutes, his feet went on, just right outside my pot. The drips on my knees were getting bigger and more frequent, adding another sound to my existence. At any moment, he could just open the lid and get this all over with, but he was choosing to mess with me. Thump drip, thump drip, over and over, faster and faster. I couldn't control my breath, and what did it matter if he was going to torment me? He knew I was there. All he had to do was open the lid and let the red light in. Let it flood in and wash over my face like a river, rinse away the guilt for just a brief moment. Instead, he chose to mess with me. He chose to step and step just outside my reach. I could barely control myself. I started to rock back and forth, and with me, the pot. Thump, drip, clang. Thump, drip, clang. I couldn't do it again. I didn't want to do it again. But when if he opened that lid, I would have to. He deserved it for stepping over and over. His never ending. Thump, thump, thump. My legs started to tingle with anticipation. I could feel the adrenaline pumping through my veins. My breath got faster as I stared at where I guessed the lid was. My pot rocked back and forth with me, getting ready for his fly-like hands to lift the lid. That's all he was, just a disgusting fly. But all he did was thump, thump, thump. I felt even more adrenaline burst through me as the rocking got faster, my breath got faster, and his shoes got faster. I have to. He'll get me if I don't. I have to. Rung through my head as the thump, thump, drip, thump, thump, clang rang on. A new sound sounded as a voice called out from the other side of the pot's walls. "Hey!" Another shot of adrenaline cracked open like lightning, and I could feel my legs practically vibrating from the sound. The thumping from his shoes meeting the hardwood floor, my breath at record-breaking speeds, the rocking only being contained by my leans, and drip dripping that reminded my legs to be ready. I want to do it again. I leaped out of the pot before his hand touched it. My head was buzzing with sounds, screams, thumps, tears, and then more screaming. Sounds of teeth on flesh and nails on muscle rang out throughout the silent museum like the most beautiful symphony. Thumps of bodies slamming on the ground, drips of ruby blood, and winds cut from hands swatting me away. I had done it again, and yet it did not go. Thump, 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 diary of a serial killer. How might one endure the silent and secluded nature of winter? Be the bear, enter a deep cave, and dream, dream, dream. Jacqueline Suskin. I probably shouldn't be writing this, but oh fucking well. When the most precious thing lodged in your heart is ripped out and crushed by an unthinking alcoholic asshole driving with a revoked license, you do things, unimaginable things, and not just burying your beloved 8-year-old son, which was not on my shitty life bingo card, OBVs. But life wasn't shitty before. The word should be capitalized, before. No, better yet, the before. Because now, life was rent in two, forever separated by the gaping maw of rage. The before and the after. A fissure of overwhelming grief that quickly cracked, allowing the steaming, boiling lava to emerge from her core. Oh, he would pay. That drunken dickhead. His money won't protect him. Not from me. They gave her the codename Mama Bear, but he never imagined that she was holed up in a cave. On a hunch, he came out to the Pennsylvania woods at night, alone. Common sense and the FBI handbook would label his actions reckless at best and suicidal at worst. But he didn't fear for his safety. Mama Bear targeted a certain type of prey. Except for being a male, he didn't fit her profile. Funny, they were both profilers. October snuck up behind him, picking up the crisp air, tossing it around. Playing offense, it switched tactics, threw it toward his face, temporarily snatching his breath. He continued to climb, quiet, crunching under his boots, allowing the patches of clearing and the light of the frosted full moon to guide his steps. He'd reach the cave no matter what, so the easy way was the best way. He put his hand in his front pocket, felt the crumpled page of a diary. The paper crinkled like the fallen leaves underfoot. It was mailed to him at his office. This one, and the other entries. He had the sense to turn in the others, but not this one. Well, most of the others. She vowed to herself that she would abstain from killing for a month, or so she wrote. By his accounts, it was day 30. He hoped her undated entry referred to October. At least he would have a day. One day. It was easier than I thought. I would say too easy. But that motherfucker mowed down my baby like a shirtless, beer-bellied jagoff, hurrying to cut the grass before the Buccos game. Maybe it shouldn't be hard. Justice shouldn't be hard. Not in the semblance of a fair world. Leaves skittered and scurried around his legs, tumbling over each other like playing squirrels. He stopped, inhaled deeply. He loved the smell of fall, that last exhale of trees mixing with ripe decomposition. I'm so glad I live in a world of Octobers. He smiled at the memory of his sister quoting Anne Shirley, not so long ago. His smile fell. Not so long ago, yet forever ago. Tragedy has a way of altering time, elongating some parts and compressing others. He looked up through the lattice of bare limbs, a web of gnarled fingers, the indigo sky stitched with rhinestones. Did the stars foretell it? It was the mutable signs of the zodiac: Gemini, Virgo, Sagittarius, Pisces, BTK, Dahmer, Bundy, the ones born at the end of a season, not in the middle, like the fixed signs, like Scorpio, like her. You'd think one was enough, but it wasn't. I realized AA was just one of many. Sure, I settled my score, but what of the other moms? South many, blights, diseases walking the earth, infecting others with their cruelty, their carelessness, their capriciousness. Someone had to bring order, just like Melville Dewey did to book classification. 000 to 999. He considered turning around to walk back down the hill. He turned, but didn't move. In the distance, the twinkling lights of downtown Pittsburgh weaved a terrestrial constellation of bridges, one-way traffic, and sundry skyscrapers. The Steel City, just like its people, metal backbones, gritty guts, and honest hearts. He craved a sandwich from Primanti's. Any sandwich. That was the last time he saw her. At Primanti's. the original one. He wasn't one to second-guess himself. His mom drummed it into their heads from the cradle. Trust self first, last, and only. First, last, only. Thanks to the internet and social media, it's not hard to find someone, or their misdeeds. What was once relegated to a diary like this is now vomited onto Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube for all to see. Many lap it up, probably because it makes them feel less uncomfortable about their own stupid decisions and meaningless lives. Here for the mindless braggart, many blowhards make for less research when it comes to this side gig. He cracked his neck, onward and upward, one foot in front of the other, crunching leaves, whipping wind, snapping twigs. Up, up, up he climbed. He was getting close. His hand reached towards his front pocket. Again. He read the page dozens of times, just like the rest. He couldn't help it. Just touching the decal-edged diary page brought clarity and understanding. He had to find her first. Could it be that easy? I think this might be my last entry. I knew it was a bad idea. No, make that bad idea, to write things down. But writers write. Fish swim. Birds fly. Dogs bark. Writers write. And mama bears? Well, unless you're bent from birth, looking at you, mutable signs, no one sets out to be a killer. Or, as I like to differentiate, a remover. Scrooge, or Dickens, had it partly right. Decrease the surplus population. He just needed to add of assholes. Decrease the surplus population of assholes. Dangerous, foul, hollow assholes. He neared the ridge. He was getting close. He pulled out the wrinkled diary page. He couldn't help it. The moon illuminated the page, but he couldn't make out the words. Strange glyphs, occultic squiggles, just like those found on the astrological charts she used to interpret. Meaningless symbols to the untrained eye, but metaphysical gold to the mystic. He didn't need to be able to read the entry. He had it memorized. The cave. He could see the entrance. Dark, yawning. An inky maw, just like her rage. He reached into the other pocket for his flashlight. She beat him to it. Her flashlight shone on the ground ahead so as not to blind him. Hey sis. Hey bro. What took you so long? In too deep. Sean sat alone in a dark confession booth, fighting back his tears. The mesh slat to his right took the shape of the crucifix. A door clicked open, and light shone through the slat, before vanishing as the door shut. I wondered if I would see you again, said the priest, sitting beyond the divider to Sean's right. The devil sat on his left. Read it to me one more time, Father, Sean said. The voice that spoke through the crucifix was soft. I would be more help if you just told me. Please, Father, don't. Just read me the passage. There was a slight shuffle of papers, and the priest began. Forthwith Judas came to Jesus and said, Hail, Master, and kissed him. Then they came, laid hands upon Jesus, and took him. Without a word, Sean left. Moonlight spilled across the Liffey while the sound of beer bottles clattering carried from the other side of the river. Sean meandered with his hands stuffed in his coat pockets, while his breath fogged in the cold air. A set of headlights crept from behind, casting his shadow lankly across the cobblestone. Finn, called a hushed voice from behind. Finn, where the heck have you been? I've been looking all over for you. Sean tensed, not wanting that name to follow him. Not tonight. He turned and held up a gloved hand, blocking the car's light. All he could see was the shadow hanging out of the driver's window, but he recognized the voice. It was his handler. Christy? Feck's sakes. Christy stepped out of the car and closed the door, the sound loud in the quiet street. He paced over to Sean and they walked together. Sean sighed. I'm sorry I had to. See the fecking priest again? Christy touched Sean's shoulder and continued. Finn, it'll be all right, lad. We're almost there. 5 years of hard work and it's all about to pay off. He released a large breath. The vapor rose and faded. Feels longer. Aye. Sean knew the question was coming and wondered whether Christy genuinely cared about his visit to the priest, or if he was simply trying to maintain a sense of familiarity. 5 years, and Christy was the only one from the outside Sean was allowed to contact. He'd requested a therapist, and Christy had come back a month later with the response, "Can't, lad. Too risky. Anything you need to get off your chest, you tell me." How could he tell Christy he wanted out of the gig? After 5 years of being deep undercover within the largest criminal gang in Ireland, how could he share his doubts now? So, began Christy. The question, the reason he was here, incoming, have they told you who you're going to whack? Sean walked over to the river's railing and placed his hands upon it. Kneel, he muttered. What? No, he said. Don't be so hard on yourself. The guard's never going to let one of their own commit murder, not even to off some degenerate. Sean nodded. As soon as you know anything, and I mean anything, location, victim, accomplices, you let me know and I'll pass it on. Conspiracy to commit murder. That's all we need. Besides, I shan't be hard to find. I'm stuck chauffeuring around the old Bell and Michiel. God knows I want to put that cranky so-and-so in cuffs myself. All right? Sean nodded again. The truth lay on his tongue, involved in a bitter feud with a lie. Christy, he said as his handler headed back to the car. Christy turned, the headlights again shining and making him appear like an obscure shadow. You right? Sean opted for the truth. Tomorrow. The hits tomorrow. The next day, Sean met Liam, Michiel's son and Sean's unwitting informant, at the Gaelic Warrior Boxing Club. The 6 a.m. session stunk to high heaven with sweat, while the sound of dozens of gloves smacking pads filled the large shed. Sean climbed the steps onto the main ring where Liam watched Patrick, the bullman Doherty, a young gun who eyed the world title. Finn, said Liam, what's the crack? They clapped hands and embraced. The first thing Sean wanted to do was to ask about the hit, but he was well practiced in pretending to be someone he wasn't, so he kept his conversation cordial, waiting for Liam to bring it up. How's he going? Sean asked, gesturing at the bullman, who was busting a sharp combo on his trainer's pads. Liam tilted his head, a habit usually reserved for discussing drug trafficking, and muttered, He's got talent, but he's a bit of a hothead. I should get him in with you, teach him how to stay calm. Calm? Sean laughed. I don't remember being calm. I just remember being belted. Nonsense, said Liam. I didn't take you on 'cause you can scrap. I manage hundreds of boxers. They can all do that. You can handle pressure, Finn. That's why we chose you for today. Sean's insides tensed, but his eyes remained unflinching. Nothing I ain't done before. Sean hadn't told Christy the entire truth last night. He had told him the hit was going to be today, which it was. He also said he didn't know who they were taking out or where, and that was the truth. But he had said Liam wouldn't be there, and that was bollocks. Well, you ain't done none like this, said Liam. "It's a Garda, a dirty coppa." Sean looked towards the boxing class taking place on the floor, hiding his reaction from Liam. Cold air swept over his skin. His shoulders shuddered, and his mind flashed to images from 4 years ago. He was 27, and the bright lights dazzled overhead. The coach was there, but he hardly remembered him. He remembered Michial and Liam in his corner. His opponent was some hard-bred scouser, as bald as a hard-boiled egg, with a mashed nose and a bitter scowl. The scouser eyeballed Sean, and Sean was shit-scared. "Don't worry about that prick," Liam had said. "He don't look tough. It's some inbred deformity." Sean turned and leant over the corner ring. Michial rubbed his shoulders, speaking sternly. "Come out with 3 fast jabs. Bam, bam, bam. He'll slip the last one, then pow right hook. You tracking?" Sean nodded and spat out agreement over his mouthguard. "All right," said Liam. "Give him hell." The bell dinged. It had been a tough fight, one that went the distance, and when it was all over, the name Finn was called out. He'd won, and the rest of the night was a blur down at Temple Bar. But before the first pint was raised, Sean had been overcome with a feeling, a deep relaxation that settled itself across every inch of his skin. A feeling that told him he didn't have to watch over his shoulder anymore. A feeling that said, "Relax. They trust you. And you trust them. You trust me, don't you, Finn?" Liam patted his shoulder. Sean swallowed and turned back to face him. "Of course I do," he said, his heart burning. That same flame that used to cinder at almost every conversation in his first year while he wormed his way in. Now they had discovered he was undercover, that he was a rat, and they were going to off him. "Good," Liam said. "Trust is important." A car pulled up in the drive, visible beyond the shed's rolled-up door. Christy stepped out of the front, shot Sean a troubled glance, and opened the back door. Michael, the old-school hardman and head of the largest drug trafficking cartel in all of Europe, stepped out. Michial, gray-haired with a stalwart face, raised his hand and beckoned the 2 men. "Come on, lads. Christy's driving." In the back seat, Sean kept his arms folded, squeezing his rib cage as it rose and fell with measured breaths. Liam was on his left, silent and staring out the window as the streets of Dublin flitted by. "I've been in this game for over 30 years, said Michel from the front seat. "And I'll tell you one thing, I've learned a lot. Firstly, if it falls into your lap, then it's too good to be true. Left here," he said to Christy. Christy flicked the indicator. "If you tell me the location, I can just punch it into maps." "No," said Michial. "Where we're going, I don't want the phone to remember." Christy's eyes burrowed into Sean through the rear-view mirror. Michial's gnarled finger appeared in the space between the 2 front seats, and he continued. "Second thing relates to the first. Be careful who you let in. The people you shouldn't trust, the ones who are out to get you, they make it easy. Make your life seem easy, I mean. Anything worthwhile is earned through hard work. Same goes for loyalty. The same thing I'm telling you, Finn. I've been telling Liam all my life. If it comes easy, it's cheap." Apart from the occasional direction from Michial, the rest of the drive was silent, although Sean was in constant communication to the Lord. "God Almighty, I ask for your courage as I venture once more into the crossroads. I'm torn between lives and ashamed to admit I have worn a mask for so long that I have forgotten my own face. I used to honor this job, finding those who lived between the cracks of a broken system, but I find myself slipping deeper into the same space with each passing hour. I am in too deep, and I fear the greater sin. to break my oath to the Garda Síochána, or to turn my back on what has become my family. I'm to blame, Father. I sowed the seeds of betrayal, and now I reap the bitter harvest. As Dublin has witnessed my struggle, may the heavens hear my plea. Pull me from this labyrinth, Lord, once and for all. Amen. Christie pulled up at Ballymun, just north of the M50. Their destination was a large pasture that stretched between Dublin Airport and a litter-filled caravan park. "We're walking," said Michial. The clouds above were a lamb of gray, and although the grass was short, the men seemed to trudge. They were heading in the direction of the airport, by the pasture's boundary, where a snarl of bushes clambered along a chain-link fence. A shovel stood pressed into a mound of dirt, and beneath that opened a wide and deep hole. "You really think we trusted you, you fucking rat?" said Michial, turning around with a black pistol in his hand. Sean closed his eyes, trying to dampen his blazing heart. His lungs pulled in a thick breath of air, which only fed the fire more oxygen. He wanted to cry like he almost did in the confession booth, and figured he very well might. Why not? Sean opened his eyes and saw the pistol aimed straight at Christie. "He's an undercover," said Michiel. "Been pretending to be my driver, all the while sniffing around my backside." Christie's hands were up, his eyes wide as headlights. "Number I'm no coppa." "Dirty bastard," said Liam, as he pulled out a pistol of his own, a small silver revolver. Mitchell pointed at his son's gun. "Finn, you're doing the honors." Liam held out the revolver. "Do this, and you're one of us, for true." Sean took the revolver, which was heavier than he anticipated. It sat in his palm, the same size as his hand. The bullet's golden casing stuck out from the chambers. One sat by the pin, anticipating the spark that would explode Sean, free from the maze that had become his life. He just didn't know where to aim it, at Michiel or Christie. "Who owns this pasture?" Sean heard himself say. "Don't worry," said Michelle. "I know the farmer. The land is only ever used for grazing. The hole's deep, and they don't crop here. The soil will never be disturbed. No one will find him." Sean took a moment, hearing the screech of a plane's engine as it readied for takeoff. Then he aimed the gun at Christie. "On your knees." Christie took a step back. "You can't be serious." "God damn it, get on your knees." Christie began to bend. "Turn around," said Sean, not wanting to see his face. "Turn around and get on your knees." Christie's eyes were darting around as if trying to find some sense in the world. He turned and got on his knees. "Please," he began. "Please, please, please, Jesus Christ. Please, God, please." Sean stepped behind Christie and held the gun to his head. Off in the distance, a plane began its long ascent into the clouds above. "Please," mumbled Christie. "Sean, please." Sean leant down, kissed Christie on the cheek, and whispered in his ear, "My name is Finn. No junior league. Running away, starting over. It's not as easy as people think. You have to give up everything. Oh, that part's easy. Everyone thinks we are all traceable, that you can't really hide. But, see, everything is tied to your identity. Your papers. If you change those, you are a different person. Fingerprints? If they're in the system, if you've ever been fingerprinted, it's a little trickier. But it can be done. Oh, that's right. You're a teacher, so of course you've had background checks. Well, you'll never teach again, so it won't matter." "What?" "I told you, you have to give up everything. When changing identities and dropping off the radar, you have to change what you do. Whatever habits you had, wherever you went, do elsewise. You won't be hanging out in bookstores anymore, and you can't join the junior league in Denver if you were in every junior league of every city you ever lived in. Change your appearance, of course, but even as a brunette, you can't join the local improv group or historical society. That's where they will look for you. Join the Corvette Club and build a persona as an expert in 1972 Flybird Corvette transmission modifications, or whatever might be a car thing that you know nothing about and could care less about right now. You can join the Quilt Club, or the Daughters of the Mayflower, I guess. If the most important thing to you is dropping out, disappearing, disconnecting, and avoiding the consequences of what you did, you have to truly start over. You cannot be the same person, because when they come looking for you, they will look for her. Changing your papers and license and online trail are just technicalities. Harder technicalities, of course, given the internet and government, but just a technicality. But you have to be willing to change, and I'm really not getting that about you. What is the good of posting misleading social media content like faking a trip to France before abandoning it all if you are just going to go to the city you've talked about since you were a kid? Oh, now you're upset? What did you think this would be like? You would change your name from Emma to Emily and go live your exact life somewhere else, just without going to jail? Were you going to get a husband named Jason, too? Oh, that was cruel. I'm so sorry. You poor thing, dealing with the consequences of your actions one way or the other. Look, I don't think you are cut out for this. You haven't really thought it through. What? No, I won't return the deposit. I don't know. That puts me at risk if I get you transplanted and then you show up at the first community theater audition and get nabbed. Yes, they will. They will be looking for you. Once they follow the dots back to you, you are a goner. They need someone to pin this on. Look, lady, it's not like you are skipping out on a credit card bill or a boring husband. A flashy murder like this, there will be a manhunt. Your picture will be out. You have to go somewhere you never talked about and have no connection to. Change what you look like. Lay low for a while. And then don't do anything you've ever done before. What kind of life is that? What kind of question is that? A life out of jail, I guess. You know what? We're done. I'm out. If you can't, okay. Okay, calm down. Yes, fine. I can still help you. But Jesus, lady, I'm not a psychiatrist. You do this or don't. I don't care. You go home, the back way, please, with your GPS and location off, and call the police and turn yourself in with some kind of sob story. Or you give me your license and credit cards and goddamn library card, everything, and take this airline ticket and this ID and catch the 4 p.m. flight to Indianapolis. Well, why not Indianapolis? Have you ever been there before? Well then, that's why. Go home and... No, you can't go home and say goodbye. You haven't heard a word I've said. Get out and dash. Oh, that's better. Good. Small bills. At least you listened to one thing I said. Let's see. Yep. That's all of it. You're going through with this then? Give me that. No, the whole purse. You can have back anything that doesn't have your name on it. Take this. You are Sarah Jackson. There's an airline ticket, driver's license, birth certificate, and 1 credit card. Here's the info and PIN for the credit card. Set up an online account. Change the address as soon as you get settled. No passport. You didn't pay me enough to leave the country. In a year, you hear me? Wait a year. You can apply for more credit. You are an orphan and a widow and have no kids. There's a paper with your history and family. Memorize it and destroy it. Do not be found with that. No one keeps around a paper to remind them who their grandparents are. You'll pass a state background check in Indiana. but a federal might get tricky. Try not to get fingerprinted. Yes, you can work. Any job you can fake. Work for cash if you can, but don't draw attention to yourself. Well, just make up a resume that you can do. There's one more service I provide. If you need a reference, call this number. Jenny will set you up. You'll get a number for them to call and get a good reference. That's the only reason to call this number. I can't get you out of any other bullshit. Well, congrats, Sarah. You have 3 hours to get to the airport. Walk about 4 blocks before you catch a cab. No, I don't care. Any direction. No, leave your car. No, you can't take your car to the airport. Are you kidding? They find your car, check cameras and manifests, and it takes them about 5 minutes to figure out Indiana. No, we can't sell it for you. Get everything you need out of it now. Listen, leave anything with your name. Don't take a receipt or Starbucks cup, for God's sake. It has to be abandoned. We'll take it out State Route 6. They'll have to dredge the quarry to make sure you didn't off yourself. Oh my God. Yeah, you're welcome, lady. You're all set. You kept about 1,000 cash like I told you, right? Split it up, put it in different places. All right, good luck. Remember, don't catch a cab right out front. Walkaways first. Oh my God, what a piece of work. Jenny, I'll be out. I have a deposit to make. Have Mario take this Corolla out to the quarry, the usual. Her? Nah, she won't make it. I give it about a month. Someone will spot her at a bookstore. Some people just can't handle change. The boy with frozen wings. You have my attention, says the Grand Assassin. Who? He... The boy drops his gaze to the Varos gold coin on the tavern's backroom table, his guarantee of safe audience, then looks back up at the man. The Grand Assassin's wrinkles and white hair may or may not be real, but the eyes are. Pinprick pupils caught in still water stare back at the boy. I can't say it. Have you heard the story of the little bird with the frozen wings? The Grand Assassin asks. Are there 2 birds and a stone in it? No, lad. It's the one about the bird flying south for the winter. The air's so cold that his wings turn to ice and he falls into a meadow. Do you know what happens to this bird? The boy shakes his head, platinum hair peeking out despite his hood's concealing efforts. A cow comes by and drops some dung on the frozen bird, and in this steaming pile of crap, the bird's wings begin to thaw. He's ready to fly again, but now he's stuck. So, he chirps for help. The boy watches the Grand Assassin's bare hand hover over the Varos coin as the man whistles a plaintive tune that ends in a soft squawk. Finally, a passing cat hears the bird's cry and comes over to investigate. It digs the bird free, cleans him in the grass, and eats him. What does it mean? Asks the boy, willing the Grand Assassin to touch the gold coin. First, not everyone who shits on you is your enemy. Second, if you're in deep shit, it's best to keep your mouth shut. But most importantly, it means that not everyone who gets you out of shit is your friend. So do you want my help? Yes. The boy throws off his hood and says the name of the Crown Prince. The Grand Assassin's hand drops under the weight of that name. His fingers touch the Varos coin on the table, and some reptilian part of his mind notes that the coin is slick, oily even, but his higher consciousness is focused on the face before him. He is staring at the Crown Prince's exact likeness. Yes, I'm his decoy. The boy pauses, hoping the man will fill in the rest. But I don't have to be. The Grand Assassin sucks in his breath once he realizes the lookalike's audacity. Steal the life of the Crown Prince, then slip in to take his place. Can he do it? How will you explain his missing decoy then? Fire, the boy says matter-of-factly. The man opens his mouth, then closes it again. He's used to watching men squirm in the wake of what's left unsaid, but this boy makes him feel like the talkative one. He watches the boy for any sign of uncertainty, but all he gets in return is a polite blank stare. Finally, he slides the coin of Varos into his leather purse. As an afterthought, he wipes his oily fingers on his jerkin. Then, the boy tells him when and where. Their audience concluded, the boy pulls up his hood and leaves the tavern's back room. He weaves through day drunks, then through the city Azamal's maze of alleyways. He stops at a bustling marketplace and takes in his surroundings. He doesn't think the grand assassin has changed his mind and decided to follow now that their safe audience is over. No, the man thinks himself a cat poised above the future king. Still, a diversion wouldn't hurt. He listens to the different voices, then joins the crowd. "There's a pretty lass," he says in a baritone voice, and pinches a fishwife's arse on his way past. The fishwife accosts a nearby man who's speaking in that same baritone voice to his friends. The man stumbles against a cloth merchant's stall. "Thief! Stop, thief!" the boy cries in the bewildered shopkeeper's own voice. Then, he nabs a new cloak to throw over his own as he melts away into the pandemonium. Along the way, he tears off the tainted gloves that he used to touch the Varos coin. Back in the castle confines, the boy is in another back room of sorts, a half-remembered guard tower. There's nothing to guard here because this edge of the castle wall ends on a cliff, a chasm forged centuries ago when the gods threw Varos down from on high. The inside is lined with scrolls and manuscripts bound between boards. This is the record-keeper's domain. The record-keeper lost his tongue for some long-ago unspoken crime. From the way the man walks, the boy knows that was not all that has been cut from him. The crown prince never comes here because he is a cow whose bovine brow cannot bear the burden of reading. But the boy loves the record-keeper. He is his greatest friend, his greatest teacher, the one who showed him the scrolls on poisons long forgotten. At first, the boy thought poison alone would be his answer, but the best one, Auria's kiss, takes time to act. There would be no guarantee he'd be positioned to take the crown prince's place unnoticed once the kiss called him home. Silent but ever listening, the record-keeper had shown the boy a manuscript on Varos and his assassin cult. Yes, the coin, the grand assassin, it's all coming together, but there's still time to talk yet. The boy and the record-keeper have their own way of speaking. The boy blasts through his repertoire of voices while pausing to listen to the tongueless man's eyes. They sit now facing each other with an imaginary coin in between them. "Have you heard the story of the little bird with the frozen wings?" the boy asks in a perfect imitation of the grand assassin. The record-keeper's eyes brim over with pride, with adoration for the protege who gives him voice. Late in the night, he will bar the servants' quarters and start a fire. There will always be more servants, and no one will count bones to make sure the crown prince's decoy is among the last lot. For now, he watches as the boy climbs the crumbling guard tower, then jumps to the nearby hemlock tree. The boy balances on the end of a branch, then he's over the castle wall. The record-keeper says a silent prayer that the boy will return riding the crown prince's horse. Deep within the hardwood forest, the boy waits at the appointed spot. He cannot see the grand assassin, but he can hear horses in the distance. The crown prince is fox hunting with his retinue and outing among sycophants. The boy shouts out a fox's warning call, a vixen's scream to draw the dogs. He throws his voice and steps behind a tree as the foxhounds bumble past him. The crown prince, whose horse is by far the fastest and whose friends dare not outpace him, is close behind with no other riders in sight. Something detaches itself from the undergrowth, and the crown prince falls from his saddle. He has time to low once in pain before the thing is on him. The now never king jerks, once then falls silent. The grand assassin is caked in mud. Only his Stillwater eyes are recognizable. They watch as the boy pulls off the crown prince's pinky ring. A knife touches the boy's throat. The grand assassin is saying something, but his words are cut short by the sound of approaching hooves. The knife vanishes. So does the crown prince's body, as the grand assassin pulls his prey into the undergrowth. With feline grace, the boy hops onto the crown prince's horse and turns to meet his retinue. Later that night, as fire burns away the memory of the decoy, the grand assassin will stare at the night sky. The stars will shimmer and merge into one bright light as the numbness in his fingertips creeps up his arm and seeps into his heart. That will be Oria's kiss, courtesy of Varos's coin, calling him home. The grand assassin won't curse the new crown prince, the future king, who would have owed him everything. No, he'll be too busy staring at the sky and trying to take flight. As for his words cut short in the woods, the new crown prince remembers them perfectly. Remember this moment, and you will. And what will the boy of many voices with only the tongueless to know his secret do? Well, some things are better left unsaid. Victim of drug lords. He clutched onto his mother's arm tightly and staggered out the sliding panels. His mother seemed to be sighing and kept casting her amber eyes downward, as if embarrassed. Jason, I'm telling you that it happened. Don't be daft, mother. Of course, it didn't, he said, with a short, almost nervous chuckle. He stole a sideways glance at his mum, only to be met with lowered eyes. Jason's dirty blonde hair whipped around his ears in the wind. It hadn't been cut in a while, and he desperately needed one. Jason, I need you to remember what happened the night you were admitted, his mother said hurriedly. They had almost reached the sleek black car by now, one that was completely unfamiliar to Jason. Mom, I really don't remember, and I don't want to. On the contrary, Jason could remember parts of the night that he was admitted into St. Clark's Hospital. But he certainly wasn't about to tell his mother that. Broken shards of alcohol bottles scatter the floor. Bright, fluorescent lights dance across Jason's eyes. These flashbacks were all too familiar to Jason. He had woken up hungover one too many times in his life for them not to be. No, it had been the pills that turned the situation sour. He only remembered the cheers around him, edging him on. Now that he thinks of it, the feeling was quite wonderful. He looked around wildly, as if expecting pills to appear in the parking lot. Jason, honey, what were you thinking about? She murmured softly, as if able to see through his helpless eyes. Just the car. Her eyes grew wide. A bubbly look arose to her face. You remember the car? She exclaimed, now clutching onto Jason's face with a red hand. Her nose looked as if on the verge of growing stalactites. the London, icy wind whipping her caramel hair around her shoulders. Jason shrugged, shrinking away from her cold hand. After being hospitalized for this long, human contact seemed alien to him. Just thought it looked familiar. That's all. His mother nodded, as if acknowledging his distastefulness at her touch. She managed to cover up the hurt in her eyes with a glance upward at the sky. She quickly told herself that he needed time. Of course, he wouldn't be the same loving child after this traumatic experience. She was lying to herself, but she needed to know what had happened. All she knew was that he hadn't been home, and when she woke up the next day and his bed was empty, the hospital had called her. She managed to pull herself out of her reverie before he noticed anything. She turned the keys in the ignition and used the loud rumble as a cover to sniffle a stray tear back up. She started reversing out of the parking lot when Jason suddenly yelped. "What?" his mother cried out, stopping the car abruptly with a disgruntled look clouding her soft features. "I'm not wearing my seatbelt." His mother looked baffled for a moment. "I don't remember how," Jason muttered, not making eye contact. "Oh, for God's sake." His mum reached over and buckled him in. She wasn't mad, really. It was just so strange that she had no clue how to act around this new Jason. She briefly thought of how different everything would now be before reminding herself of her emotional state and decided not to. Her eyes trained on the road. She kept her mind on the task at hand for the time being. Jason, on the other hand, was allowing his mind to wander freely, stealing the occasional glance toward his mother. He felt guilty. Of course he felt guilty. But there was this dark pit of resentment towards his mum that he was unable to explain. Maybe it was him, or even his imagination, but she seemed off. "Honey, I just have to stop off at a friend's house to drop some taster cupcakes off." She owned a cupcake business on the edge of town, a successful one at that, too. Now, looking out the window, Jason gave a curt nod, not turning around. The sleek, black car turned sharply into the friend's driveway in a lovely, bucolic setting. It was a 2-story brick house, slathered in white paint and large windows adorning the front. Curtains served as a block, so passers-by would be unable to look inwards. Rose bushes enclosed the low gate that led up to the house. Jason's mother put the car in park and climbed out, taking the bright-colored cupcakes with her. Jason turned around for a split second to look at his mother. The cupcakes caught his eye, reminding him of the multicolored disco lights at the party. He looked away stiffly. The door slammed shut, and the overwhelming heat from the golden rays of sunlight settled over Jason like a thick, woolen blanket. He shivered and curled up on the seat. The silence was comforting. Meanwhile, Jason's mother had rung the doorbell of the house. 3 times. She counted down in her head. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. "Hello, Barbara," a deep voice said. Standing in the doorway was a tall, bulky man, his unshaven face causing the mere dichotomy between Barbara's, or Jason's mother's, smooth, round face, and his rather wrinkly-looking one, to become more apparent by the second. However, he didn't appear to be old, just poorly taken care of. Barbara gave him a dirty look and pushed through him and into the house. She now stood in a room or junkyard. It was impossible to tell. She dropped the cupcakes on the floor indifferently. There was only one lamp with lace trimmings turned on, the room relying on this one dim source of light to be illuminated. Rubbish was strewn across the floor, empty cans of soda and cartons of milk. Barbara wrinkled her nose at the mess. "What, too low class for your liking?" he inquired with raised eyebrows. She proceeded to ignore him with a haughty tilt of her head. "Let's get down to business, Tom," she said, arms crossed on her chest. "Barbara, I couldn't give him any heavier ones, okay?" he said with downcast eyes. The teens at the party were already looking at me funny as it was. Lucky I only popped him a few pills. Barbara opened her mouth to interject, but he interrupted her. "Before you ask, I was wearing a mask, and half of them were too high to see my face anyway." "Okay," she nodded slowly. "Look, Tom, we agreed on a price. Only if you could put him in a coma for 3 months, and you achieved only 1 of those months. He wasn't supposed to wake up today. How the hell will I take him home with all the drug shipments lying around?" Her amber eyes blazed alive like fire. She had been subconsciously walking closer to him, as steady as possible, with her red stilettos upon rubbish. Tom sighs and pulls something out of his pocket. "I gave him 5, Barbara. 5! The kid must be crazy to be able to handle all of that." In the dim light, the pills were indiscernible to Barbara. "Tom, which ones did you give him?" Tom walked over to the curtain and pulled one of the curtains right back. He blinked in the sunlight as if he had never seen natural light before. "Ah, that's much better," he grunted. Meanwhile, out of the house, Jason was getting rather hot in the car. His mother had also been gone for an awful lot of time for just dropping off cupcakes. He tried to pull open the door, but it was locked. Weird, he thought. He reached over and unlocked the door from the driver's side. He climbed out carefully, the soft patch of grass beneath him, easing his landing. He shielded his eyes from the bright sun and noticed the pulled-back curtain on the ground floor. Quickly assessing the weird events on his mother's part throughout the day so far, he decided to just take a peek before ringing the doorbell. Jason crept stealthily up the path and through the low gate. He positioned himself in a way that his body would be invisible to anyone in the home by the other drawn curtain. so he was able to lean a little to the right and see what was going on. I must look very strange to any passers-by, he thought to himself, stifling a nervous giggle. He tended to laugh when he was nervous. It had gotten him into heaps of trouble during test-taking at school. But Jason couldn't care less about school and their stupid, restrictive rules. Balancing mainly on his right foot, he leaned a little to the right. His eyes were met with quite a scene. But Jason was blind to all when he saw it. The pills, the pure white, and streaks of childish yellow throughout the little pill. His memories rushed back in a torrent, and as he looked at the man, the more familiar the face became. He was the guy who popped the pills for him and then dragged him out of the party. He watched through the clear glass as his mother paid the man. The tragedy of Frederick Thorpe. The guards dragged a man through the gallows. His eyes were flushed and red, and his face was swollen from holding his breath, for he refused to allow even a single tear to fall. The guards pulled the man up the stairs. The soddened and weathered wood creaked and bounced with each step. They carried the man across the stage of the scaffold to the hangman, whose eyes were buried in the hollows of the Hessian burlap fastened to his face. A crowd had gathered in the gallows. Among them was King Theobald, the crown of the Northern Empire, who sat front and center of this spectacle. King Theobald raised his hand, and the crowd reduced its whooping to a whisper. Centimillion. You have been charged with, tried, and convicted of embezzlement and treason of the highest order. You packed your purloined purse with pilfers and compromised the integrity of our nation. You are hereby stripped of your duties as High Commander, and for your transgressions you shall reimburse the crown with your life. Senti drew a deep breath, but before the hangman could cinch the rope, Senti coughed to the crowd. I, Centimillione, am a convicted man, and I maintain my innocence. But since my sentence is irrevocable, I have only one request that I wish, in my final moments of life, to be granted. King Theobald flicked his wrist, and the hangman stepped away from the edge of the scaffold stage. And what might that be? Someone is missing from the crowd, and I would like for that person to be present. Seeing their face would comfort me. Who? Frederick the 14th. Rory, a captain of the Northern Imperial Army, climbed out of the crowd and approached King Theobald. I shall fetch Frederick for you, sir. Very well. We shall resume upon your return. Frederick Thwittichon stepped away from the window in his bedchamber. The spectators had gathered in the gallows below, and they were jeering loudly as the hangman held the nape of the man on the platform. Frederick threw his back to the wall near the window, working his thumb and pointer into the fissures of his forehead. One moment, I'm the chief officer, and in the next, I'll be High Commander. High Commander I'll likely be crowned tomorrow. I must prepare. Frederick, at his desk, retrieved paper and a fountain pen, then began to write. Dearest King Theobald, our illustrious crown, I am most truly obliged to you. An image twinkled in his periphery. Across the room, above the mantel, there was a painting, a portrait of 3 men of similar stature and countenance to each other. Also to Frederick IV, but to a lesser degree. From on high they stared down at Frederick XIV as he crossed the room towards them. Tomorrow, I shall be named High Commander of the Northern Imperial Army, and I will follow in your footsteps. And maybe one day, my personage will join yours in portraiture. He received 2 knocks at his door. Who's there? Celia, sir. Captain Rory would like to join your company. Frederick opened the door to reveal Celia, the chambermaid, and Rory, a step behind her. Rory. Sir, there has been a request made for you. What is the nature of this request? Am I allowed inside? Frederick ushered Rory inside. King Theobald has granted Senti one wish. Has he not been executed? In only a moment's time. But never mind that, Frederick. Senti's wish is to see you. Frederick flew across the room and away from Rory. See me? For what reason? Frederick, you are but his dearest friend. What is the reason for your delay? Frederick turned his back to Rory. There is no reason other than that I would not want to see a hanging in the gallows. But you have witnessed your fair share of executions, none of which have been dear friends, Frederick said. So what shall I tell Senti? Tell Senti that my love is with him, and that his visage shall be forever reflected in my duties. Of High Commander, Frederick nodded his head. I'll likely be crowned tomorrow. His ill repute shall be absolved with me. Ill repute? Are you suggesting that you believe Senti to be guilty? Senti was convicted. Frederick kicked at the lint littering the floor. Whether I believe that he is guilty or innocent matters not. His shadow will swing in the gallows, inevitably. What am I hearing, sir? Have you not shed a tear at the thought of his absence? Yes, many times. Then how could you dare allow him to leave without one final show of your affection? I think that it is best for both he and I to not meet under such conditions, no matter how sentimental. Frederick turned his back to Rory. The crowds below began to bellow beneath the cloudy sky. Rory sneered, slamming the door behind him. Frederick XIV to the portrait. Father, grandfather, great-grandfather, I hope that after the ceremony tomorrow, you'll acknowledge me as one of your own, an aurora in the sky of our heritage. I hope that I will have proven myself worthy in thine eye. King Theobald belted out from the gallows. Centimilione. Frederick returned to the window, but did not look out. You have been charged with, tried, and convicted of embezzlement and treason of the highest order. You packed your purloined purse with pilfers and compromised the integrity of our nation. you are hereby stripped of your duties as High Commander, and for your transgressions, you shall reimburse the crown with your life." Frederick's face twisted centripetally into his head, wringing out but one tear that trekked the contour of his cheek to his chin. King Theobald, "Hangman, allow Centimilione to pay his debts." The wood of the gallows outside creaked. The lone tear from Frederick's face croaked when it splattered across the floor, and the sound of Senti's final grunt echoed. 2. Patrilineage. The wind stirred recklessly, carrying waves of rainwater across the land. Lightning found Frederick's bedchamber, and thunder clapped in his ear, waking him from his slumber. He held his aching head. "Celia, Celia." The chambermaid rushed inside with a candelabra. "Yes, sir." "I cannot see." With the candle from her candelabra, she lit more candles, placing them at various spots throughout the room. "Fetch me a glass of water. My head is tender and sore." Celia left the room. Frederick laid on his pillow until he heard a voice. "Son." Frederick opened his eyes, and standing at his bedside was his father, Frederick the 13th. "We must go now." Frederick could see his grandfather, Frederick the 12th, staring out of the window, and Frederick 11th, his great-grandfather, admiring the portrait. Father, grandfather, great-grandfather, why must you leave now? I seek wise counsel. Your ways have offended us, Frederick 11th said. There is no way that we could accept you as you are, Frederick the 12th said, and we will not offer wise counsel. Your legacy is now your own. Frederick the 14th said. Thunder hammered, and lightning seemingly struck the center of the bedchamber, forcing Frederick the 14th to shield his eyes from the blinding light. Frederick opened his eyes. Father, Father. Frederick searched the room, but they were gone. In their wake, he padded across the parquet floor to his mantel. He squinted at the portrait, and what he saw poisoned his heart. Only the 3 heads of his patriarchy remained. Their bodies had disappeared entirely. Celia handed him the glass of water. Are you okay? Frederick kept his face in the fold of his elbow. He thumbed up at the portrait. Tell me what you see, Celia. Your great-grandfather, grandfather, and father. Can you see the whole of them? Yes, sir, I can. I must rest. Frederick chugged his glass of water and sent Celia away before climbing sluggishly into bed. He laid with his eyes wide. The torrent raged outside. I declare war, Frederick snapped his fingers. More spirits. He reclined in his gilded chaise lounge with a glass in his fist, which Celia refilled. Frederick finished the glass in one gulp, then dropped it. The thick crystal thumped across the varnished wood. He stumbled from the chaise lounge and grabbed a hold of 2 harlots, and they guided him to the bed. Present were 2 officers, Francis and Giles, each heaped with a pair of women, and spirits in their midst. "How's it feel to have an empire under your command?" Francis jeered. "Grand, and the luxury to rest on your laurels in the lap of an impregnable kingdom," Giles said. "Swell." Frederick looked to the women. "Kiss me, will you?" The 2 women pressed their faces into his. He received a knock at the door. "Who dares disturb me?" Frederick burped. "Celia, sir." "Are you aware, Celia, that we are engaged in official military duties?" "Yes, sir." "Then why do you bother our securing of this great nation?" "The chief officer says he must see you now." "Allow the sap in." Rory rushed in. "Mr. Rory, chief officer, have you come to join in the luxuries afforded to our ranks?" "No, sir." "Then why do you—" Frederick burped again. "Why do you dare interrupt our briefing?" "The Southern Empire, sir," Rory said. Frederick slurred. "Yes." "They have declared war." Frederick puckered up instantaneously. His eyelids spread wide. His pupils shrunk to little black dots, and his eyes receded far into skull. He folded his dressing gown across his chest and crossed his legs. "The South has declared war, you say? What must we do?" "But you are the High Commander." "Right. King Theobald rejected their demands and accepted their declaration of war. He has since issued a decree." "Very well." Frederick stumbled to the center of the room. "Everyone out, save for the chief officer." Only Frederick and Rory remained. "High Commander, what is your plan? Our nation's security is at stake." I know. With his arms crossed high on his chest, Frederick crept across the room to his mantle. He laid his head into his rested elbow. He looked up to his portrait. 3 silhouettes now stained the canvas. "Chief officer," Rory observed Frederick's constitution with a hawk's eye. "Yes, High Commander?" "Look up at the portrait and tell me what you see. Your great-grandfather, grandfather, and your father. Why? Do you see the whole of them?" "Yes, I do." "Heavens, gather the rest of our staff. I will meet you all in the Hall of Mirrors." "Yes, sir." Rory exited the bedchamber. Frederick to the emptied portrait. "How could you have abandoned me at such an inopportune time?" Frederick's eyes were deep, dark portholes that revealed no soul. "Celia," Celia entered. "Yes, sir." He raised his glass. "More spirits, please." 3. The soul of a man. Frederick hunched forward while clearing the gown from his feet, tottered into the Hall of Mirrors. In the center was an expansive table with 15 chairs measuring its circumference. The army staff silently observed the High Commander's disposition. Frederick looked them all over and pointed out an unfamiliar figure, a kimono-clad, ashen-faced woman. "Who's she?" "Kitty." She lifted her face, slightly peeking under her brow. "A medium." "Why should we need a—" Frederick burped. "A medium? She will be of assistance. as we plot the fate of our empire. She couldn't possibly serve as our wise counsel. We, the staff of the Northern Imperial Army, conceded that neither of us but one is able to offer wise counsel. But you are the best of the best, are you not? Our very best was plucked from among us, Rory said. Now we must seek wise counsel elsewhere. Where else? From beyond the grave. Frederick waved his hand. Under no circumstances shall we do such a thing. High Commander, you must understand, lives are at stake. Your reputation is at stake. And since you cannot lead us, then we must source our dearly departed friend. Frederick turned his back, observing the staff through the mirrors. Senti milione, centi, senti. Frederick humbled into the circle of fog on the glass. You remember him, don't you, High Commander? Right. Of course. Why wouldn't I? A great man. Then there should be no objections. Rory turned to the medium. Kitty, if you will, please bring to us our dearly departed Senti milione. Kitty placed 2 Japanese taiko drums on the table before her and clanged them rhythmically. She left them alone, and the rhythm continued in her absence. She leaped weightlessly from the floor. With the fabric flagging from her frail frame, she raced across the polished mahogany from end to end, mumbling a chant. She stopped. On her back, she convulsed atop the table, arching her body before falling to the floor. From the floor, a figure rose, the soul of Senti milione. The army staff could not believe their eyes. Senti? Rory, it is I. The two hugged. Staff, what a pleasure to be in your presence once again. Senti found that Frederick was huddled in a corner of glass. Frederick, my dear friend, join us. How? Frederick crawled to the table side. It has been so long since I last saw your face. My final request was to see you, but you didn't show. I know. How come? I couldn't bear to see you in that moment. Senti caressed Frederick's head. It's okay. Senti looked to the rest of the staff. So, why have you summoned me? Rory pounced. Our great empire is at war. There should be no issues then. A Frederick is amongst you. We seek wise counsel. Rory continued. Senti looked down. Frederick IV avoided Senti's gaze. Senti jousted Frederick. Have you spoken to your father? Frederick was silent. Well, have you? Rory barked. Yes. And your grandfather? Senti continued. Yes. Your great-grandfather too? Yes. Great. What did they say? Frederick broke free and ran to a mirror across the room. This cannot be, he whispered to himself. Senti followed. What's the matter? Frederick broke free once more and darted to another mirror. This can not be. How could it be? Senti met him there as well. Frederick didn't resist. Senti, tell them how good of a friend you were to me. Frederick brushed Senti's ghastly complexion. You were a good friend, but I was not. Rory stood up at the table. What do you mean, my friend? Senti asked. Frederick looked suicide pact. Every Friday, my parents cook the most delicious turkey that has ever existed on Earth. They use natural ingredients that I have never heard of before. Every time they make it, I ask them for the recipe. They just never tell me. Instead, they looks at me with a smile mixed with sadness and joy, and tell me that one day, when their time has come to pass, they will tell me. Tell me the secret ingredient. This is the routine that happens every week, every Friday. Little do they know that their time will be my time too. Although I know that my parents won't tell me the recipe, I give it another shot. Walk up to them, give them my best smile, take their hands, and ask. But they already know what I am going to say. They grin and shakes their heads, nodding towards my room, sending me the message to get ready for bed. I sigh and slump towards my room. I stop in front of my door. The door is decorated with pictures from my favorite band. The picture on the very left makes me smile. It's the picture of my favorite band member making a silly face. I laugh dreamily and stare into his brown eyes, but I'm not the only one laughing. Soon enough, my older brother Luke is pounding me on the back and laughing. Not really a nice laugh either. Lola, you've got to stop this, he chokes out. Stop what? I demand, my brows furrowed. Stop joking around with your pictures. It's too funny to handle. I raise my eyebrows high and stare at him, long and hard. Finally, I shoot him a glare and step into my room. I don't forget to slam the door right into his laughing face. See, this is the reason I need to get away from my family. My brother. He is so annoying. You wish that you weren't born. And I don't. Yes, I am killing myself because of my brother. It was either this or run away. But if you run away, you just get kidnapped and killed anyway. So what's the difference? Once safely in my room, and my brother gone, I sneak into my closet and pull out the small but strong bulletin board that I got from my grandmother on my birthday. I forgot to check yesterday's square on the calendar, so I will do it with today's. I take the white chalk I have been using the past month out of the box that it was in and slash 2 white lines next to the others. When done, I carefully put everything back in my closet and lie on my bed. Breathing slowly, I run down the suicide plan in my mind. When I come back to my room from brushing my teeth, something in the room is different. The lights are off. Did Mom come in here? Dad couldn't, because he's in Miami for work. Oh no. What if my brother came in here? I try to shrug it off and crawl under my covers. The whooshing of the wind outside quickly drowns me in my sleep, and all my thoughts are lost. The next morning, I get up late. I quickly eat breakfast and get ready for school. I arrive at school on time, but I'm still worried about the lights turned off yesterday. Someone must have went into my room, did something, and forgotten that the lights had already been on when they went in. My worried look must be severe because Angie, my best friend, asks me if I am all right at lunch. "Oh, I'm fine, I reply. Her head is cocked to the side, and she studies me closely. I try to give her a brief smile and shrug it off. This is a good idea, because Angie knows that my shrugs are all truthful and intentional. I feel so bad, though, for betraying and lying to my friend, even though she can help me get out of this mess. I remind myself that some things are meant to be dealt with alone and individually, but I still feel bad. So before the lunch bell rings, I ask her if she wants to come over, and her face lightens. She tells me, of course. When school ends, we meet up at our usual spot near the gate and start to walk towards my house. We talk about the usual things: hallway gossip, grades, and boys. When we get to my house, we watch a movie and make slime, which fortunately takes my mind off things. Before Angie leaves, she hugs me tight and whispers into my ear that she knows something is wrong and that she can help me anytime with it. She tells me that I am never alone. If only that were true. Even after our time together, Angie and I only used up 3 hours of our time. I still have 1 hour left to chill. I get bored, so I decide to slash today's mark earlier than usual and head into my closet. When I pull out the bulletin board, though, all the tally marks are gone. I'm so shocked that I gasp out loud. What? What? I stutter. I was not going to let this go. If someone had done this, only my brother could. My mother wouldn't do such an evil thing. But if my brother had read the notebook, then he would know that he was being such a pain. I wait until he comes home from work and confront him. It did not work as well as I thought, though. He convinces me that I can't kill myself because of one person, that I need more bad things in my life to hate myself enough and kill myself. We sort it out, and he swears to not be much of a pain anymore. I guess some things are meant to be dealt with by talking and not action. I have learned my lesson. Mariner of Innsmouth. I write this now from a hospital bed not far from my hometown. Though I am labeled delirious and force-fed medications whose names I cannot pronounce, do not believe that this testament is anything other than truth. It was 2 days ago, several miles away from the outer shelf reefs from the coast, when I was aboard a sailboat that drifted seemingly aimlessly over the waves. As the setting sun reflected its vibrant hue on the lapping crests, I, the schooner's sole passenger, leaned against a railing as I stared out across the waters. My name is Howard Phillips, and I was out on this solo sailing journey to find a new clarity in life. 3 days before was my father's funeral. My relationship with my father was a perplexing one. I looked up to and admired the man, but felt like I never really knew him too well. I found myself wondering about the conversations that would never be had, the beers never drank together, the lessons and the stories that would never be taught or told. After the funeral, I had expected to feel some clarity and peace, but instead found only distraught and confusion. And I now often wonder about my own life and where it could lead. I was left this small sailboat in the Will, and I found it a sign of what to do next, and without a second thought, put everything else on hold, loaded up the boat, and sailed off into the unknown with the belief that I myself could be known. Now, with the currents pulling me ever outward from land, I treated this as an autopilot for the craft as I stared in a yearning way into the waters below. I watched as I saw a small school of fish swim by. Though I could not identify their breed, I mused at the occasional scaled adventurer who would jump from the water away from their brethren as they tasted the open air and observed a whole new, alien world. I admired these displays and began to wonder if this was some metaphor from the universe I was meant to see, some natural guidance on my own mission for self-discovery. As I watched the fish surface to dance above the cresting waves, I felt I caught a glimpse of something further ahead in the water. It seemed like two orbs of crimson, as if two eyes were staring at me from below. But when I scanned the waters to better see these supposed eyes, they were nowhere to be found. I supposed whatever bigger fish they belonged to had swum away, or, more practically, it was a trick of the light of the setting sun. As it distortedly emulated back to me, I shrugged away from the shimmering vision and turned to face the mast. As I did so, I saw a large onyx storm cloud approaching fast in the distance. I rushed to the wheel, yet was too late as the rushing gales moved at a seemingly supernatural speed, enclosing on and whirling the small boat in all directions as my vessel lurched aggressively to and fro. My only option was to cling to the railing for fear of losing myself to the now crushing waves which hurled against the sides of the sailboat like slapping tentacles of a great kraken. The schooner broached and was nearly knocked down. As I was raised into the air, I looked down at the opposite end of the boat and saw that the mast was nearly parallel to the water. I then peered into what I believed to be the murky depths below, except that with a flash of thunder, there appeared to be land not far below me. With that quick blaze of light, I witnessed an unending plain of putrid mud, amassed with the carcasses of decaying fish and horridly foul, less describable things protruding from the sludge. I thought I would feel relief by knowing there was land not far below should I capsize, but instead An even stronger fear gripped me, a primal fear that whispered in my heart of the unknown horrors hidden beneath the waves, as the unknown, lurking darkness between the spaces of rot and decay beckoned for I to join it in eternity. I witnessed and experienced all of this and more in that split second, in the boat's rocking, in that short burst of illumination. But now the ship had leveled out and rode the waves on the merciless winds, whose howls in my ears sounded more like mournful ghosts of all the lost sailors who fell to their watery graves in all the histories of man who came before me. On the horizon, I saw once again those dark crimson orbs from before, though now they rose from the waves instead of hiding beneath them, with churning waters to mark its rise to the surface. The thing slid into view above the dark waters. Those soulless eyes sat as two windows of malice against the face of a towering loathsomeness as it rose to face me. Two monstrous, scaly arms rose to cast in my direction. I turned my face and cowered in a squat huddle against my forlorn vessel, unable to hold my gaze upon the Goliath for fear of losing hold of my sanity. With my eyes squeezed shut and my whole self trembling, I prayed for release from the Leviathan's wake. The sailboat lurched again, this time with such force that I was knocked into the air and hurtled into the water. I felt the unsettling sensation of the sludged mire below, the masses of decay and putrid remains pouring over and surrounding me as I sunk deeper into the concoction of fetid slime and rotted scales which cut deep in my skin. I felt it seep into my nostrils and under my eyelids, and the groping carcasses felt like an incalculable sum of vengeful hands gripping me, pulling me deeper and deeper still into my shallow grave. My consciousness faded, and all went into nothingness around me. That's when I awoke next in a hospital near the coast. I don't know how I escaped, or what became of my father's boat. I only know I was found washed ashore, bruised and littered with abrasions. But I was alive. As I lay on my hospital bed, with no company but the memory of that nightmarish storm, I realized I had found the clarity for which I had set sail, though it was a clarity I would wish on no one, and wish only that we all could remain in our blissful ignorance of the truth. The truth that, as men, our place in this world is that of mere playthings on a board of cosmic proportions for being far beyond mortal comprehension, that the storm that man finds themselves trapped within is at the whims of those who rise from the deep. Sole passenger leaned against a railing as I stared out across the waters. My name is Howard Phillips, and I was out on this solo sailing journey to find a new clarity in life. 3 days before was my father's funeral. My relationship with my father was a perplexing one. I looked up to and admired the man, but felt like I never really knew him too well. I found myself wondering about the conversations that would never be had, the beers never drank together, the lessons and the stories that would never be taught or told. After the funeral, I had expected to feel some clarity and peace, but instead found only distraught and confusion. And I now often wonder about my own life and where it could lead. I was left this small sailboat in the Will, and I found it a sign of what to do next, and without a second thought, put everything else on hold, loaded up the boat, and sailed off into the unknown with the belief that I myself could be known. Now, with the currents pulling me ever outward from land, I treated this as an autopilot for the craft as I stared in a yearning way into the waters below. I watched as I saw a small school of fish swim by. Though I could not identify their breed, I mused at the occasional scaled adventurer who would jump from the water away from their brethren as they tasted the open air and observed a whole new, alien world. I admired these displays and began to wonder if this was some metaphor from the universe I was meant to see, some natural guidance on my own mission for self-discovery. As I watched the fish surface to dance above the cresting waves, I felt I caught a glimpse of something further ahead in the water. It seemed like two orbs of crimson, as if two eyes were staring at me from below. But when I scanned the waters to better see these supposed eyes, they were nowhere to be found. I supposed whatever bigger fish they belonged to had swum away. Or, more practically, it was a trick of the light of the setting sun. As it distortedly emulated back to me, I shrugged away from the shimmering vision and turned to face the mast. As I did so, I saw a large onyx storm cloud approaching fast in the distance. I rushed to the wheel, yet was too late as the rushing gales moved at a seemingly supernatural speed, enclosing on and whirling the small boat in all directions as my vessel lurched aggressively to and fro. My only option was to cling to the railing for fear of losing myself to the now crushing waves which hurled against the sides of the sailboat like slapping tentacles of a great kraken. The schooner broached and was nearly knocked down. As I was raised into the air, I looked down at the opposite end of the boat and saw that the mast was nearly parallel to the water. I then peered into what I believed to be the murky depths below, except that with a flash of thunder, there appeared to be land not far below me. With that quick blaze of light, I witnessed an unending plain of putrid mud, amassed with the carcasses of decaying fish and horridly foul, less describable things protruding from the sludge. I thought I would feel relief by knowing there was land not far below should I capsize. But instead, an even stronger fear gripped me. A primal fear that whispered in my heart of the unknown horrors hidden beneath the waves. As the unknown, lurking darkness between the spaces of rot and decay beckoned for I to join it in eternity. I witnessed and experienced all of this and more in that split second, in the boat's rocking, in that short burst of illumination. But now the ship had leveled out and rode the waves on the merciless winds, whose howls in my ears sounded more like mournful ghosts of all the lost sailors who fell to their watery graves in all the histories of man who came before me. On the horizon, I saw once again those dark crimson orbs from before, though now they rose from the waves instead of hiding beneath them, with churning waters to mark its rise to the surface. The thing slid into view above the dark waters. Those soulless eyes sat as two windows of malice against the face of a towering loathsomeness as it rose to face me. Two monstrous, scaly arms rose to cast in my direction. I turned my face and cowered in a squat huddle against my forlorn vessel, unable to hold my gaze upon the Goliath for fear of losing hold of my sanity. With my eyes squeezed shut and my whole self trembling, I prayed for release from the Leviathan's wake. The sailboat lurched again, this time with such force that I was knocked into the air and hurtled into the water. I felt the unsettling sensation of the sludged mire below, the masses of decay and putrid remains pouring over and surrounding me as I sunk deeper into the concoction of fetid slime and rotted scales which cut deep in my skin. I felt it seep into my nostrils and under my eyelids, and the groping carcasses felt like an incalculable sum of vengeful hands gripping me, pulling me deeper and deeper still into my shallow grave. My consciousness faded, and all went into nothingness around me. That's when I awoke next in a hospital near the coast. I don't know how I escaped, or what became of my father's boat. I only know I was found washed ashore, bruised and littered with abrasions. But I was alive. As I lay on my hospital bed, with no company but the memory of that nightmarish storm, I realized I had found the clarity for which I had set sail, though it was a clarity I would wish on no one, and wish only that we all could remain in our blissful ignorance of the truth. The truth that, as men, our place in this world is that of mere playthings on a board of cosmic proportions for being far beyond mortal comprehension. That the storm that man finds themselves trapped within is at the whims of those who rise from the deep. ship's sole passenger, leaned against a railing as I stared out across the waters. My name is Howard Phillips, and I was out on this solo sailing journey to find a new clarity in life. 3 days before was my father's funeral. My relationship with my father was a perplexing one.